Hello and welcome to the first build instalment of the Cirrus Moth by David Boddington. In the last video I said that the wings had already been started, so I would focus on the fuselage, and that's what I'm going to begin now. The first thing I've stumbled on is, because it's a plan that's associated with a kit, there are no parts drawn out on it. Rather, the parts have been identified by numbers. And I must admit that I find that really frustrating, because it means I've got to read the instructions, and being a typical sort of bloke, I hate reading instructions. Never mind. So the first thing to do is to identify the named parts for the fuselage, and I've started doing that. This is the main part that you begin with. Let's zoom in on that a little. This section here is made up of one piece of wood, which I've actually found on this sheet. Part 113 makes up that side. They're beautifully laser cut out, actually. Just a little tab to cut through to free them. And then there's a series of doublers and parts to be added to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is find them all. I think I found most of them. These parts here double together to make 1/2 inch thick cheeks that go underneath the bearers. These parts are for the saddles for the wing. This is for the nose taper. And then of course we have the formers themselves. And these are cut in ply, and as you can see, they're very free. They've been done really well. I'm very impressed with them. And this one, you actually have to cut them out and glue them together. Well, I say cut them out, they're all but cut out. And these are some for the turtle decking at the rear. So what I'll do now is I'll begin to cut those out. And once they're all cut out, we'll start building them up, and I'll show you the process that I'm going to go through. There we have it. The parts have been very easily cut out. Now, one has to remember that they're handed, and you make sure that when you're gluing them together, you remember there's a left and a right side. But the first task I need to do is to glue together some of these parts, doublers, to get the required thickness. And I'm going to use PVA glue for that. Smear both sides, put a bit of weight on them, or I may use clamps to clamp them together. And once that's done and they've had time to set, we can move on and actually start building the sides. So the next bit's quite boring. It's literally watching paint dry or glue dry. So I'll crack on with that, and then we'll start building up the sides. There we have it. The sides have been clamped together with the doublers. There's a right hand and a left hand one. These are being weighted down, these parts, to make up the 1/2 inch thick balsa. And I've also cut out the formers just to double check everything was aligning correctly. So it's just a case of patience, leave it, get on and do something else, and then come back in an hour or so. Having left these overnight, it's now time to unclamp them, and they should be well glued. Or take weight off in this case. These are the inner cheeks, which will set the dihedral angle, which we'll see in a moment. Really handy, these clamps. These are from the days when I built scale model sailing ships and steam launchers. So that's the inner side, that's the outer, and this depth is blended away so that we get the profile at the front of the fuselage. And there we have it. two-handed fuselage sides. Now, the way these go, you take this, it sits up front like this, and then you have to allow for this part, which is 102, and it glues along the front here, and this sits just behind it. So I'm going to use this former to set the position so this is correct, and then glue this in. So you notice that there's quite a marked angle on here. There's a lot of down thrust on this model, which might seem quite alarming, but I have actually flown one of these. I own one, and it does need that much down thrust, so I've got no problem with that. So you can see there's quite a pronounced angle, and then these are the engine bearers. So they would be glued in at the correct angle set by this cheek. That's essentially it. There's the angle there, the engine bearer itself, and then we can see that these are then an excellent slot. A lot of sunshine coming in this morning, so there you can see it slots together really nicely, and the neatness of the fit obviously adds enormously to the strength. If I'm ever checking a model over that I'm buying second hand or part built, if you see massive gaps all the way around it, it's not a one to go running to purchase or to take on. So there we go, that's how it's going to go together. I'll get this set out, we'll get these glued in place, and then we'll start completing one of the sides. While I'm waiting for the sides to dry before I start installing the longerons, I thought I'd show you how I approach this issue of gluing two balsa parts together which have a close seam. Now this is a former 106 which needs obviously to be glued together. I think it was made like this just to fit it on the sheet rather than cutting it out of one piece. So the aim is to glue along here, and what I would normally do, let's see if it works, is I'll take some tape and get the pieces lined up like that. Okay, so I've now got a hinged joint, and I'm going to run some CA along the joint line. Open it up so we can ensure that it gets in and doesn't just seal the edge. Press it flat. If you want a little bead along the edge there, it'll be capillary drawn in with capillary reaction. Done. Pull off. One completed piece ready to be used. Just keep waiting for the glue to dry. Much of the preparation work's now been done, and both sides are now ready to start adding the longerons to form the basic fuselage. So what we have here, this is the core, or the main area that you start building on. There's the saddle, the cheek for the cowl area, the engine bearer supports and the engine bearers themselves, and you can see they're at an angle. And I've now pinned down the one of the fuselage sides, and I'm about to start adding the longerons here direct onto the plan. Now it only shows one profile, and what I intend doing is I'll fully build this side, I'll add the formers one at a time, making sure that they're at right angles in the correct locations. When all that's glued, I'll take it off the board and I'll build the other side. And what I intend doing is making one of these sections without pinning the board down, and then when it's completed I'll pin it on. I think that's the most accurate even way of doing it. So here we go. We'll do this as a bit of a time lapse because I'm only cutting bits of wood. These are the timbers. What I will say actually is I've had a good look at them. They're good quality, what I think I would call quarter grain, nice and stiff, but they're not heavy, they're light, and they're all the same, which is important, because if you've got some harder and less flexible than others, it can cause all kinds of problems when it comes to pulling the fuselage sides together. So I'll crack on with that, and you can watch it as a time lapse, or you can just fast forward to the next part. So that's the basic rear end of the fuselage glued down now. I've actually used PVA glue or white Gorilla Glue, which is a departure for me because I'm often using CA. But I think sometimes if you can use PVA glue, it's got more flexibility than CA glue has. I'm just quite pragmatic about what I use. Anyway, to the next issue. This is the first departure from the instructions that I've found regarding the build. This is the material that's provided for the diagonals, which obviously build a lot of rigidity into the rear part of the fuselage. It's not the dimensions that it says in the instructions. It's 4mm square rather than 3x4. And the idea was that you set it with, I would imagine, packers so that they sat off away from the external surface so you couldn't see them. That's not going to work here. They are going to be visible, but I don't think that's a big deal. So I'm going to press ahead and use these to finish off this section here. Now that that's complete, the next stage is to add the formers or the bulkheads in position while it's still pinned down and ensure that they're at right angles in this section. Obviously, as the tails pull together, the tape will be created here, but this part we want these bulkheads to be, or formers to be, at right angles. So this is what we're going to do. I'm not going to glue the front one in, I'll tell you why in a moment. This is the first part to go in here. So liberal application of white glue. I really like this Gorilla Glue. I think it's very good quality, does the job. Glue that in. There we go. Wipe off the excess. And that, make sure I've got some glue on here actually. That will go nowhere once it's set. So let's tidy it up a little bit. I normally run my hands across the CA and I end up in a real mess, but there we go. That's that one. Here's the next one. Let's get that glued in. some across here as well. Nicely in, nice fillet of glue. Let's just ensure it's square. Yes, I'm happy with that. And this rear one, which is made out of a hard but still light balsa. These have been ply. I suspect this is going to stick to the plan, but it's plastic, so it should lift off. And this is where the CE is going to come in. Quite happy with those, they're locked in. This one's less so. So I'm going to square it up, and then I'm going to run I will run some on if I can cut the end and free it up. I'm going to run some CA along the edge here, which will ensure that it's going nowhere. That's it, happy with that. Now this front one, I'm going to use some 2-pack epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, put it in here, and this goes on, it's the nose cone, and I want that to be really strong in case it takes any slight impacts, shall we say. And then that'll be left overnight to dry thoroughly, and when it is, I'll lift it, do the other side, and the next video, I think I'll call this a day at this part of the build, will be a section on ensuring that the fuselage is put together and it's square, it's not like a banana. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the journey so far. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Give it a thumbs up if you don't mind, and if you have the opportunity to get flying, get out there. If not, let's get creative and do some building. Thanks for watching now.